All right, another edition of the Wrap Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell. And a reminder, if you have not yet subscribed to our content, hit that button down below. Jim, point to the button. There's a subscribe button down below. If you want year-round exclusive Padres content, that's why we would ask you to hit the subscribe button. So we're doing this all year round. We've got you covered throughout free agency. We had you covered throughout the managerial search. We'll get you ready for spring training. Everything upcoming for the 2022 season. If you're a Padres fan, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Like our videos and follow us on Twitter as well, at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. Before we get going today, top free agent targets for the Padres when it comes to position players. I'll tell you about our title sponsor, Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. If you're shopping for auto, home, renters, or life insurance here in San Diego, we've been telling you about a San Diegan, Mark Nimitz over at Farmers Insurance, who's got a decade of experience. He helps people like us find the perfect insurance products. And what is separating Mark from the competition, trust us, I talk to Mark all the time. I see him in his office. He's just got great customer service and communication. So if you have any insurance needs, all that we ask, if you're a supporter of this show, click the link down below in the description. You'll get to Mark's website. He can help you and your family with your insurance needs.
All his information is above my head. Phone number and email address. Best way to reach him, mnimitz at farmersagent.com. That's mnimitz at farmersagent.com.
Believe it or not, Jim, free agency begins in Major League Baseball Sunday night. And now a lot of people are expecting it's going to be a slow market. The CBA is looming. It expires at the end of November. It might not be the most star-studded class, but this is an exceptionally deep class of players, both position players and pitchers. And today we're going to take a look at some potential position players that could help the Padres in 2022. So do we all agree? Jim, do you agree that the needs are this? Padres need a power bat. They need that third 30 home run threat. They have Machado and Tatis. They have Cronenworth, but he's a 20-25 home run guy. They need that third 30 home run threat. They absolutely need to upgrade their bench. They absolutely need to upgrade their outfield. Would you agree those are the needs for the Padres heading into 2022 from a position player perspective?
Absolutely. This team needs more power than just Tatis and Machado. I guess you could kind of throw in Cronenworth because he had 20-plus homers, but I don't view him as like a power bat. I just view him as a really good hitter that can get you 20 to 25 a year. But a guy that at any moment you're like home run pop, home run power, especially on their bench because their bench is not good. It just has no power on the bench. I feel like the bench is a major weak point for this roster. So getting an outfield power bat because you're going to lose Tommy Pham potentially. Get more pop, get more consistency off your bench. Yeah, those are absolutely the needs for this team right now. Maybe upgrade the catcher spot, but I don't really know like what upgrades you could really do over Nola and Caratini that's like significant that are outside the organization because you already have inside the organization Luis Campusano. I feel like that right there is the power and batting up, upgrade that you need. So other than that, I don't know what's going to happen at first base. We all think that Hosmer is not really going anywhere. So you're not going to go out and look for a big time free agent at first base. So yeah, outfield and bench. Those are the two spots where this team has immediate needs.
All right, so you're going to want to watch this entire video because we're going to run through all the names, and we're going to give you 10, 15 names right now. We'll tell you what's not happening in our opinion as well. So let's start there, Jim. I mean, Carlos Correa is a free agent. Let's all agree it's not happening.
Nope.
Corey Seager because of position and money, not happening.
Nope.
Marcus Semien because of position and money,
nope,
not happening. Right now, you could have more serious conversations if you want to entertain Nick Castellanos. I'm happy to do it. I think he would serve a valuable role. The problem is he's the top position player, free agent hitter available. He's opted out of a $34 million deal with 2 years remaining. He's getting 4 or 5 years. He's getting $100 million plus. So because of that, I don't see it. And then a Freddie Freeman, again, if you want to have the conversation, we can have it. It's a complete theoretical. He's not leaving Atlanta after winning the World Series. No. He's going to get $25 million plus a year, even at his age. He's going to get 4, 5, 6 years, even at his age. So Castellanos and Freeman, you'd love to have them, right, Jim? But there's no scenario. I mean, we could pretend. I don't want to come on and pretend like, man, the Padres are in on Castellanos and Freeman. Ideally, you'd love to have a player of that caliber, but with this payroll and the lack of flexibility, I don't see the Padres entertaining either of those. Would you agree?
Yeah, those are dream scenarios that I don't think will happen. You have too much invested in this roster right now already at those positions. So unless something drastically changes where they unload the Hosmer contract, they unload Will Myers, those guys aren't, I feel like, realistic options. While I would want a Nick Castellanos or an absolute Freddie Freeman, like I just don't see that happening.
All right, so let's get to some of the names. So let's go one by one. I mean, names that are more realistic. I mean, there's no
Mhm.
guarantee the Padres will be in on any or all of them, but some combination of these players, the Padres, I guarantee you this, are going to have interest. Let's start with maybe the most obvious one, in my opinion. It's Chris Taylor, who plays a lot of infield and has played a lot of infield. And you could argue, well, maybe you don't need him in that scenario, although I do think he helps when guys get blows if you get the DH in the National League in 2022. He's also a very undervalued center fielder. Now, do you have a need at center field? You could argue that. You might not. I think he's an undervalued left fielder as well. So he plays multiple positions. Now he's 31 years of age, I believe.
Mhm.
He plays all these positions. He's going to get paid, Jim, based on what he's done in a Dodgers uniform, what he did down the stretch in 2021. I'm thinking he's getting 4 years. I'm thinking he gets a sizable number, but it's not a number like Castellanos, obviously, or Freeman. So when you hear Chris Taylor, do you think he fits the right needs for the Padres? And can you envision a 31-year-old outfielder, versatile player, utility guy getting the 3 or 4 or 5 years from AJ Preller?
He's AJ Preller's prototype of a player where he can play multiple positions. He fits in what they need right now. I do I think that the Dodgers are going to let him go? No. Do I think the Padres would be a good landing spot for him? Yes. But again, we're talking about how much is Chris Taylor going to cost? And for what Chris Taylor did this past year for the Dodgers, making his first All-Star team, he had a really good postseason. He had that walk-off homer against the Cardinals. I would love Chris Taylor here. I just don't see it happening, and I don't think he leaves the Dodgers unless he gets some crazy offer from another team.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is a stretch. I think it's way more realistic than Castellanos or Freeman. I do think
Right.
it's a stretch. I'm
It
with you.
could
I do believe
happen.
but I do believe that there's a good chance he'll be back with the Dodgers in 2022, unless someone so absurdly overpays for his services and maybe
Right.
gives him that extra year as well. All right, let's move on. How about Nelson Cruz, who was rumored to the Padres at the trade deadline? Shoot, they had interest in him maybe at first base, which is crazy, even though he plays so much DH. Maybe you get the DH in the National League again next year. He had an 832 OPS in his age 40 season. He's at 32 or more home runs in every full season since 2014. He made $13 million last year. So you could get him obviously on a 1 year deal. He's 40. You can get him in the neighborhood of 10 to $14 million. You know he's going to be a serious power threat. We're talking about a need for that third 30 home run guy. If there's a DH, Jim, it's an absolute no brainer in interest in
Mhm.
Nelson Cruz, right?
Yeah, I think that their interest in Nelson Cruz earlier this year at the trade deadline has to kind of signal that they're looking at him this offseason as well. Because, like you said, the DH, we think it's going to happen. Even if it doesn't happen, I think Nelson Cruz would be a top free agent target for this team because of the power that this team is lacking, because he fits well with the clubhouse dynamic with Manny and Tatis. I think that with the DH, if there's a DH implemented in the National League, it's a no-brainer, perfect fit for me. I don't think he's going to cost a lot of money. I don't think he's going to demand multiple years. I know Preller likes to have guys under multiple years instead of 1 year contracts, but I think that for him, you kind of probably have to make an exception here for a 1 year deal, maybe a little higher in average annual salary. But I would do that deal in a second if this team or if the National League got the DH. I would be a little hesitant if the DH isn't implemented before the start of next season. But if it is, it's a no brainer for me. He's your DH next year. I mean, he's hit what 30 home runs in how many straight seasons?
Every year since 2014, other than the pandemic year.
Okay, so this guy is a proven track record of consistent power. You need that. We just talked about it. This team is lacking power. I know what Nelson Cruz is, almost 40 years old,
No, he's
but
41 right now.
okay, so he's 41 years old, but he still's got it, and he still can hit, 30 home runs, and he's not a guy that is going to have a wear and tear on his body because he plays a position. He's just the DH. He's a hitter. That's all he
Yeah, and
does.
the second half of his career, to your point, I mean, the second half of his career is his career. He's been a much better player from like age 33 season on.
Mhm.
449 career home runs, real serious power threat. I don't see how you don't make an offer for Nelson Cruz. I really don't.
Yeah,
Now,
and,
here's the
and
name.
just
Mhm.
sorry, just real quick, David on Twitter asked a question of me about Nelson Cruz. So, David, this is for you, buddy. This is your Nelson Cruz offseason update until we
Yeah.
find out more.
All right. Here's a name, Jim, I'm not as high on, and I think some people probably are. And I do think he fills a role. I just don't know if he's checking all the boxes for me. Jorge Soler.
Mhm.
We know about the World Series. Unbelievable. World Series MVP. You look deeper, his WAR this year was a negative point 0.4. He's a career 246 hitter. He's a career 796 OPS. I'm not buying based on postseason success, which, by the way, was World Series success. Again, does he fill the role of power bat in your outfield? Yes. He doesn't hit for average. He hits for power, although it's not crazy power with that career OPS. I mean, maybe he's coming into his own. Somebody's going to overpay, in my opinion, for Jorge Soler. He's going to get multiple years. I don't know if I'm overpaying for a guy that, hit 220 something this year.
No, I agree. The recency bias or the recency to want to give this guy a bunch of money is there right now because he's the World Series MVP. But I agree with you. If you can get him on a 1-year deal type of situation, then I think that would be great. Because he's a guy that I would feel uncomfortable with as a everyday player. But if you have him in like a platoon situation, where he's one day on your bench, like to bring that guy off your bench, that's a pretty good option off your bench. But if you need a guy that we talked about has pop, his OPS to me, 796 over the last,
Yeah,
what's
in his
career?
career. Yeah, it's good.
It's
It's
good. It's
fine,
not
but
it's
it's
not
not. I
great.
mean, it's exactly,
But the
exactly.
thing with Jorge Soler, I feel like, is the best Jorge Soler is the guy that is not playing every day. He's a
Mhm.
guy that, you know, starts 3 out of 6 games a week, maybe even 2. And if he's on a hot stretch, then you start him 4 out of 6. But he's a guy that if you pencil in as your everyday left fielder or right fielder, then it's going to be some growing pains, not growing pains, but it's going to be a struggle because it depends on how much money you give him. It's the 1-year, $10 million deal. I, that's fine. That's great. But anything other than that, like if you start going multiple years with Jorge Soler at big time money, um, you're probably going to be looking at this contract down the future as a bad contract.
And I don't see a scenario, Jim, where a 29-year-old coming off a World Series MVP doesn't get multiple years. I don't. So that's why I don't think he's going to
Yeah.
be a good fit for the Padres. I think someone overpays for Soler. Now, here's an affordable name, in my opinion, that makes a lot of sense. Jacques Peterson.
Mhm.
First of all, he's coming off a 1-year deal, $7 million. He's entering his age 30 season. Now, you look at his last 2 years, the productivity has been very limited, if we're being honest.
Mhm.
But he's played in just a zillion postseason games, 79 career postseason games, two-time World Series champion. Because of his affordability and because of the fact that he's one of these guys that you just know has a winning element to him. Again,
Mhm.
if you just look at the numbers have not been good these last couple of years. Is he worth a flyer, in my opinion? If you can get him on the cheap, which it seems like you could, he's coming off the $7 million deal. He would be worthwhile to me to consider on a 1-year flyer deal.
Absolutely. I talked about him with people about that's the type of guy that I would like to see AJ Preller go and put a flyer out there for a guy that for a 1-year deal, see what you got, and left-handed power bat can play left field, right field, mostly right field. But if you brought in a Jock Peterson and it's the last year Will Myers, I think Will Myers, an everyday player, Will Myers isn't you know going to maximize his value. I think a platoon situation with Will and Jock and right, that's intriguing to me. That's pretty intriguing because then you put a guy on your bench one day and you strengthen your bench, right? So you have two guys off your bench that could have power. You have a matchup there. So lefty on the hill, you have Will Myers. If you have a righty on the hill, you have Jacques Peterson. So you take care of your bench problem. You take care of your power problem in right field. You take care of matchup situations if you bring in Jacques Peterson. And it's all dependent on, can you get this guy on a flyer deal 1 year's $8 million? I don't know if that's realistic, just because we'll talk about him in another video, but Jurickson Profar just picked up his option for what, $8 million? That's a lot of money for Jurickson Profar, who doesn't really give you what this team is looking for. So will Jacques Peterson take a 1 year, $8 million deal to return to the National League West? Or is he going to try to bank in and make a little bit more money just because he won the World Series with the Braves and had a pretty good postseason? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you get him for that rate because he's coming off that Dodgers World Series in 2020 and signed a 1 year deal with the Cubs. I think you get him for that rate. To your point, is that the platoon you're looking for? Is that the right combination of players? Again, I think Peterson has value beyond his numbers, if I'm being honest, because of his postseason experience and because he's only been on winning teams essentially in his career. And I think he's due probably for a bounce back because he's not old. He's not young, but he's not old. Let's move along here. A player I really love. Now, he's far from his prime, but another guy with a winning DNA. He's a former MVP, Andrew McCutcheon. Kutch, who is just a good ball player. Now, I get it. You're kind of buying on the cheap, so to speak. He didn't play well in Philadelphia this past year. You look at his multiple years in Philadelphia, they've been okay. His last year really wasn't very good. I think his on-base percentage is in like the low 300s. But here's a guy that fields really well in his career. Has proven to get on base. Hits a little bit for power. He just does everything for you. He does everything, in my opinion. He does everything fairly well. He's coming off a 27 home run season, but he only hit 222. He's 35 years of age. Obviously, it's a 1 year flyer. He plays center field, but he also plays corner positions. I think he's got a little bit of speed probably still left, even at age 35. I don't know what it would cost. I don't think it would be expensive. So, I think it's a name you have to at least consider, Andrew McCutcheon.
Yeah, I think he fills needs for this team, and he's also would be cheap. Do I see him as an everyday player? No. He hit 222 this past season, but he did hit 27 home runs.
Yeah.
And if you can get a guy that he hits 225, but he can give you 27 bombs and he can have an on-base percentage of like 340, 330. I think that's a good fit. And he's a clubhouse guy, former MVP. He can help Trent Grisham out because, Trent Grisham, I feel like the Padres still believe in Trent Grisham to be that everyday center fielder for them. And I don't think Trent had a great season this past year. I think he, digressed a little bit. But Andrew McCutcheon, 1 year, $3 million. Yeah, I'd do that.
Might cost a little more than that, but I don't think it would cost a lot more than that.
35-year-old for more than.
No, you're right. Yeah, it's not going to cost a lot. You're right. Whatever it costs is not going to be the difference in getting him or not. It's not going to be like, oh man, he's at 4.9. We can't afford him. They can afford Andrew McCutcheon. The question is, again, you need to upgrade in your outfield. What's the most important element of that? Is it the power? Is it what side they swing from? What is it? The fact that they can play corners, or is there one corner more important than the other? We don't know about Pham as of yet. We don't know about Myers as of yet. We don't even know the long-term intentions of Grisham, although I think it's for him to
the only thing
2021 to get better.
The only thing with McCutcheon is if you brought in a Nelson Cruz and an Andrew McCutcheon, then I'm starting to worry here. Okay, you brought in a bunch of guys towards the end of their career, hoping that they duplicate what they did a year ago or 2 years ago. That's to me a concern a little bit. It's okay, you bring in these guys, have really good, baseball cards in the back of their baseball cards, all their stats, but you need them to actually do that with you. And you're kind of running the risk here because they're at the end of their careers.
So if you brought in one of those, and you wonder if they'd be better trade deadline candidates. So prove it in the first half of the year, acquire on the cheap, Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I mean, you're not going to give an arm and a leg for a 41-year-old DH or a 35-year-old platoon outfielder.
Hmm.
I can see a scenario where one of them is signed as a free agent. I'm with you. Are you going to? I mean, you're really old. If you're getting Cruz and McCutcheon and you're keeping
Right.
Hosmer and Myers, and you're not young, but you're in a
Mm-mm.
again, but your window's now. So if you think it helps you in 2022, I think it's a worthwhile proposition. Let's run through a couple of more names. Kyle Schwarber. I think he's a DH candidate more than anything else. I think he obviously clobbers right-handed pitching, which could be advantageous as well. I think it's a name to consider if you're looking to add power. Then look no further than Schwarber.
Yeah, I would love Kyle Schwarber, but I would only love him the deal that he got this year. 1 year, 10
Yep,
million.
yep, yep.
Anything more than that, you're running the risk of, is the contract gonna look bad? If you give him a one like this contract this year, 1 year's 10 million, he outperformed that
Hmm.
like crazy outperformed it. All-star this year. Um, he did a great postseason with the Red Sox. I would love Kyle Schwarber. Again, it's about, do you want to pay multiple years for Kyle Schwarber?
I don't think
Tough.
so.
No, but if you can get him for a 1 year deal, then absolutely. But it's going to be hard to get him on a 1 year deal after the year he had.
Here's an interesting name because of the Bob Melvin connection, Mark Canha, who, when
Yeah.
you look inside his numbers, here's the thing with Mark Canha. He had a really good power year, but that's the only good power year he ever had. Whenever it was a 2020 or 2019. So if that's the most important asset of an outfielder, then I don't know if Mark Canha makes a lot of sense. Now he might be very affordable, but are you looking for someone that, again, they've got guys that are the 10 and 15 homer guys. That's the problem. I think you can forego a little bit in batting average to find someone that's capable of hitting 30, 35, shoot 40 home runs like Nelson Cruz. So I don't know if Mark Canha really fits the mold or not.
I think that Mark Canha would be an interesting person because I'm looking at his last 3 years. His on base percentage is 377. His
He gets
OPS
on
is
base.
816.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
2020 was what it was. But uh, I think he's the last 3 seasons, even the last 4 seasons since 2018, his on base percentage in those 4 years, 366, and his OPS still of
Mhm.
807, OPS plus of 124.
So
I think,
you kind of like it. He's 32. He'll be 33 in February.
yeah, but I'm talking myself into him, looking more at
Mhm.
his numbers here. Um, he fits kind of what they need. He's a right-handed bat, but uh, bring a guy in from Oakland, um, clubhouse guy. Like this team needs, this team values on base percentage. We know that because how much Preller loves Tommy Pham.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, right.
so a guy that can get on base at a 377 clip his last 4 seasons, 366, excuse me, his last 4 seasons. Uh, uh, that's pretty enticing. It's a guy that isn't a big name, maybe might not generate the type of deal that a Kyle Schwarber would generate, but he gets the job done and he can give you 15 to 20 bombs, not playing every day, and he can get on base for you a 370 clip. I'm
Yeah,
intrigued by him. I kind of like it.
I'm with you. I mean, he made $7 million last year. You wouldn't think it would cost much more than that, if anything more than that. Maybe it's a 2-year deal. I'm with you. Career 244 hitter, but 344 on base. You have to
Yeah.
love guys like that. You have to understand their value. And yeah, maybe it's a little more pop than I'm giving him credit for. Career OPS 776. I don't think it's anything to write home about for
Mhm.
an outfielder or a first
But I'm
baseman,
looking at
but
his last like 4
serviceable.
years, like his career, okay, but I'm looking at the 4 years where he really took that leap and that jump. Because you can look at his
Mhm.
career and his first like 3 seasons aren't that great, and that weighs his career numbers down.
Yeah, but or you could just take 2019 out and say, well, what has he done? Because he hasn't hit more than 17 home runs in a season other than 2019. I mean, 17 home runs. I mean, it's good at the end of the year. If you're
Same
85
as
and
Will
77,
Myers.
say, did Mark Canha fill the role that they were looking for, which was to, I mean, where is the power coming from in the outfield right now? If it's not
I'll
Trent
tell you
Grisham,
this. It's better than what Tommy Pham did this year.
yeah, you're probably right. You
So
know what? It's
just
like
there, it's
it's
an upgrade.
Yeah, you're right. Not probably right. You're 100% right. All right,
100%.
How about Brandon Belt? You want power at first base? Now he's not young, and he's turned it on here these last couple of years, and he's in his mid-30s at this point. I mean, Brandon Belt on a 1 or 2 year deal. We don't know what's going on with
Not
Hosmer.
happening. Not
It's not
happening.
happening.
No,
Back
not
in San
happening.
Francisco.
Back in San Francisco, or I just don't see him leaving San Francisco. Buster Posey just
Neither
retired
do I.
there. They have a bunch of money off the books. They're gonna make sure to bring back as many pieces as they can as they for this 107 win season.
Mhm.
Um, and Brandon Belt at the end of the year when he got hurt, he was like their best player. I mean, he had a career year. So zero chance Brandon Belt would take a 1 year
Okay.
deal to come to play at San Diego. I
How
would
about
love it, but
Avisail
not happening.
how about Avisail Garcia, who declined his
Interesting option.
option? Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
free agent now, and he's coming off a really big year. 3 WAR year, 820 OPS plus 117 this past year. He's not old. He's only 30 years of age. Put together a really good season with Milwaukee this past year. He did. I'm trying to see what he made last year. He made over $10 million last year. So
Mhm.
he's gonna, and without the option, and you're looking at multiple years, you're looking at 10 to 15 million a year, right? I mean, you're looking at
Yeah.
2, 3 years, 30 million for two, 40, 45 million for three. But he's put together some nice seasons. And again, he's not Andrew McCutcheon because he's not 35 years of age. He's only 30 years of age. And he's coming off a better year than Andrew McCutcheon.
Yeah, I think Garcia would be a great fit for this team. Again, the problem is, do they have the resources and the money to do it? They do, but are they willing to go the 3-4 year deal at 15 to 20 million uh for this player? Like I just don't see how they can commit to something like that when they already have so much committed on this roster right now. I think it's like, okay, the roster is what it is. There's some players we talked about that I think are absolute options. They just need to, sharpen the edges of this roughed out roster, and you need to have guys that bounce back and have really good years, like Trent Grisham. Will Myers needs to stay healthy. Eric Hosmer, I know that's a big issue, but it kind of feels like he's going to be a big part of this team next year. You need to have young guys perform offensively. What's going to happen with Ha-Seong Kim? He's not going anywhere. Jerkson Profar, he's not going anywhere.
Mhm.
Nola needs to have a better year, plain and simple. He had a really bad year offensively. Plagued by injuries, didn't play many games as they expected him to play. They need him to hit, plain and simple. So while I think a lot of these options are good options, and I would love to have, Garcia or Cruz or Taylor or, Schwarber or Peterson on this team, it's hard to realistically say, I think, that multiple guys that we just talked about could sign with the Padres. I think that they could pull off one of these guys to come to San Diego, and I think all the names we talked about are good. But the Garcias, the Schwarbers, the Belts, the Taylors, it's going to be hard to get those guys because I think they're going to demand multiple years.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And by the way, I agree also that it starts internally. Like some of these guys have to have better years. And by the way, CJ Abrams is probably going to need to produce for a contending team. I mean, the Padres
Mhm.
hope to be a contending team. Like you can't spend at every position. You
No,
can't deal with problems and throw money at all of them and expect to compete in the long term. You can do it in the short term, although you can argue if that even works based on what happened in 2021 with the Padres. Did we miss any names? Reply down below. Like, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, who are we not thinking about that could be a good fit for the Padres? The reason to subscribe is we're going to do this whole thing again with pitchers. So, top free agent pitching targets, and the Padres need help both in the rotation and in their bullpen in 2022. So, we're going to do this whole thing again later this week. So subscribe. Hit that subscribe button down below, Jim. Show them. Hit the notification bell. If you like this content, please give us a like. And remember to follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell as D. Until next time, This has been the wrap-up show presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance.